Episode 3, When Motherhood Stops Feeling Like You. Welcome to Minds Made Steady, a Prosper counseling podcast on faith, feelings, and practical psychology. I'm Larissa, a mental health therapist who blends psychology and faith with practical tools to help women and families step out of overthinking and survival mode. You'll learn simple ways to feel calm, steady, and fully present because you were meant to prosper in your well-being. Today, we're looking at chapters 7 through 9 in the book Prosper in Motherhood. This section is for the mom who has quietly wondered, what has happened to me? Maybe before motherhood, you felt capable and confident, you were productive and clear on your goals, you knew how to measure success, and you had roles where your effort turned into visible outcomes. Then motherhood changed that entire feedback loop and left you floundering a little bit or trying to figure out what's next and what are you working towards. The reason this happens sometimes in motherhood is because the work can feel mundane and repetitive and the needs are constant. The wins can feel quieter or go unrecognized from the outside world when everything you do is taking place inside the home. And the progress can become harder to measure if you're using old metrics that Progress can become harder to measure depending on the metrics you're using. Unexpected things can happen too. In chapter 7, I share the story of finding out that I was pregnant again a second time while we were still knee-deep in medical appointments, navigating doctor appointments, MRIs, cardiologist, ophthalmologist, neurologist appointments for our firstborn, having appointments 2 or 3 times a week while trying to manage hospital and insurance bills. That moment in time brought fear of the unknown. There was fear about our finances, fear about our capacity to help our child and give him what he needed, and fear about how we were going to move forward. Also fear when we found out that we were pregnant a second time and how we were going to make all of this fit and work together. And I think many moms know that feeling. Something happens that was not a part of the plan, and your mind immediately starts scanning for what you do not have. All of a sudden, you're noticing you don't have enough time. There's not enough money, not enough patience, not enough margin, and not enough help. All of this is a scarcity mindset type of thinking. Perfectionism tries to come in and solve everything. Perfectionism tells us to work harder, do more, get it right, add more to your routine, and don't mess this up. But perfectionism has good intentions. It rarely brings peace. It usually just gives us pressure and burdens that we're not measuring up. Chapter 9 reminds us that the goal is not to be a perfect mother. Jesus is the only perfect one that ever walked this earth, but the goal is to be a more honest, compassionate, accountable, and grounded mother. You can grow without shaming yourself. You can improve without being hard on yourself and condemning yourself. You can take responsibility for things that need to change without attacking yourself. And you can want to do well without requiring yourself to do every single thing perfectly or going above and beyond. There's something that we say in counseling, just do good enough, because when you are good enough, you're doing things well. When we often say that I'm not doing good enough or I'm not measuring up, it's this impossible standard. The bar is set so high that we can't ever attain good enough because it won't ever be good enough, right? It's like this oxymoron of doing better, but then never being able to attain or measure up to that. Chapter 7 shares the surprise pregnancy story during an already intense season of medical needs and financial pressure. And the first response was fear and scarcity. But the chapter moves towards what we call having a wise mind, looking for support and trusting God one next step at a time. So what exactly does it mean to have a wise mind? When we're in feelings of overwhelm, we can tend to camp out in one of 2 categories. There's those who tend to become analytical and focus on logic and reasoning heavily without paying attention to their emotions or feelings. And then on the other hand, there's those who camp out heavily in emotions. You're driven by your feelings, your mood, and your urges, and you can feel impulsive and have big reactions that maybe feel more emotionally charged than what they need to be. And we want to find a balance with wise mind. The sense of the logic and the emotions, the reasonable mind and the emotion mind. It is the part of you that knows something is true, and it can integrate both your thoughts and your feelings, your logic with your intuition and your long-term values. So using your wise mind helps you make effective decisions. One tip from the book is to write a letter to that perfectionism part of yourself. And you can even go so far as to name this perfectionist inside of you. I sometimes refer to mine as Perfectionist Patty, but it helps externalize the perfectionism from me so it feels less overwhelming, that actually it's just a part of me that shows up when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And perfectionism is a way that we try to seek control. The downside is that it's often coming from a good place, but it's not helpful. So these are the questions you're going to ask your perfectionist part. What are you trying to protect me from? What are you afraid would happen if I stopped performing? And what do you need to learn about grace? An example might be, I'm trying to protect myself from losing my temper. And if I stop performing, I'm afraid that I would feel out of control. And what I need to learn about grace is maybe to find small approaches that are actually attainable versus putting more pressure on myself to be perfect. So instead of, I don't want to lose my temper, I want to practice speaking with a softer tone and taking one breath before I respond. One prosperous mama affirmation. You can try these if you're going through a stressful moment. You repeat them to yourself, write them down where you can read over them. At the end of each chapter, there's multiple affirmations that you can choose from. Try this one. What God says about me is the most important voice in my life. Or say, God's compassion for me is bigger than my inner critic. Remember, God's design has your wellness in mind, and you can prosper in your good mental health journey. See you next time. If you're a high-capacity mom who feels like motherhood has stretched your identity thin, grab a copy of Prosper in Motherhood on Amazon and read chapters 7 through 9 and join us for the next episode. If you would like help quieting that inner critic you're struggling with or looking for faith-aligned mental health support, book a free consultation at www.prospercounsel.com. The information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is given with the understanding that neither the host of the show, its guests, publishers, or producers are giving legal, financial, professional, or clinical advice. Consult with your own licensed professional before implementing.